Welcome to yet another edition of Cheap Heat. Inexpensive, mostly. Jazz records, rock records, fusion records. That's my favorite, jazz rock. Some prog by artists that maybe you're not familiar with. Maybe you are. But anyway, these are records that are inexpensive, hopefully, either via Discogs, eBay, or your local record stores. Good luck looking for things, always. This is part 2 of the Enja label survey that I'm doing. And keep in mind that a lot of the Enja stuff came out in the late 80s, early 90s when CDs were getting big. And I've got quite a few CDs on the label. I'm gearing these talks towards LPs. So, I've got a lot of other stuff on CD. In fact, Enja was one of those labels that would put extra tracks on the CD. So that was, I'm going to buy the CD. I'm not an audiophile by any stretch. It's good to have nice equipment, but I'm not one of those guys with the $10,000 turntable. What are we listening to now? It's on the Enja label, and this is relatively new to me, and it came out in 1985. And I knew all the players involved, but I hadn't known they recorded together. And the group name is oddly not present on the front of this album. The group is called Reflexionen, Reflections. And it's a cooperative quartet, as you can see. Urs Gruber, who I know from the Swiss group Ohm, with Bobby Bury and Freddie Studer and Christy Doran, my favorite guitar player. Don Friedman, a fantastic piano player, a generation older than the other players in the band. Joel Alouche, really wonderful drummer who's sort of a Zelig of avant-garde jazz and fusion. He's on a lot of different records. I talked about a record that he was on quite recently, a Jean-Pierre Yabador record that he played on. That was really nice. But he spent some time up in the Scandinavian regions and recorded with all those guys, the Simon Spang Hansons of the world. Anyway, he's on this. He plays fantastic. He plays tablas as well as drums. And Palle Danielson on bass. Anyway, you're hearing this in the background. It's not as avant-garde or out as you might think, given Urs Gruber's pedigree as a pretty avant-garde musician. His recordings on Hat Hut and Hat Art are not for the faint of heart. I really like them. but here he's much more in a modern sort of modal post-Coltrane mode, as you can hear. The same group with a different bass player recorded a couple records for Timeless, which is not Enja, but it's a similarly neglected and under-recognized wonderful label out of Europe, out of Holland specifically. And Bobby Bury is the bassist on this, the bassist from Ohm. So, and these records are great too, and they're not expensive. So I got all three at once, because when I found out about the existence of this group, I just went berserk. Anyway, the title of this record is called Remember to Remember, and it's just fantastic. I really like this group. I like discovering new music, and I like discovering music that I didn't know about that's not new. Okay, so Enja label. One of my favorite artists on the label, and a guy who's several of whom's CDs I own, is Marty Ehrlich. And I think this is his first release on Enja. Not his very first release, but his first release on Enja. Plaint. And I don't know about you, I love an album title that's a pun. I'm a real sucker for that. This is a great record. This is considerably more out than what we're listening to now. It's got a great rhythm section. Anthony Cox and Bobby Previtt, they really kick things into high gear. Stan Strickland, very wonderful reeds player, joining Marty Ehrlich in the front line. They collectively play about a dozen different reeds. They really mix it up on this. Flutes, clarinets, all kinds of saxophones. All original compositions, I believe, by by Marty Ehrlich. And this album has a real distinct sound. Ehrlich has got almost some of his compositions have almost like a Bach-like fugue counterpoint thing going on that's just really beautiful. The one after this, Traveler's Tale, is absolutely stunning. Really a great record. I have the CD. This is a little bit more out than that. There's definitely some free stuff going on here. But, you know, if you're into that sort of edgy, free bopping kind of jazz, I highly recommend this record, and it's cheap. This is truly cheap. Plaint by Marty Ehrlich, released in 1988. A lot of these records, a lot of the first several records we're going to talk about are from the 80s. I subscribe to a few Substack things. I guess you call those blogs. And I should probably pay, but I just get the free version. But anyway, there's a really wonderful drummer named Vinny Speranza. And I had these records picked out like a month and a half ago for this video blog, and he brought up Mark Helias in his blog, and I thought, oh my gosh, and these records specifically, and Mark Helias is yet another sort of under the radar figure whose influence looms much larger than perhaps the people knowing him as a player or a composer. He's a very influential bassist and composer, band leader. He's in all kinds of really interesting bands. He's in one of my favorite records of all time, which came out on Winner and Winner, or JMT as it was formerly known. It's called Corporate Art. And it was put together by the management of these guys, and hence the name of the band, Corporate Art. It's Mark Helias on bass, Bobby Previtt on drums, Christy Doran on guitar, and Gary Thomas on reeds. And I just really like that record. I play it all the time. This is Mark Helias' record under his own name, and you can see the personnel on it is unreal. Tim Byrne, Robin Eubanks, Greg Osby on a few tracks. The late Herb Robertson on trumpet, he and flugelhorn, incredible playing on this. Nana Vasconcelos on percussion and voice on a couple of tracks, and Victor Lewis perhaps turning in the performance of his lifetime on this record, The Current Set. Really great record. Really, really great record. It's kind of contemporary jazz. It's not super out. It's edgy though. It's not music to be trifled with. This is music to be listened to, not background at all. That said, it's suspiciously palatable, I would say. It's really a fun and easy listen if you're so inclined to modern jazz and edgy sounds. Really like this one a lot. It's a great record, and it could be had for next to nothing. Helias did another record that's similar, but not quite. It's called Split Image. This is from 85. I believe this precedes The Current Set. Let's see. Yes, The Current Set's from 87. This is from 85. Again, basic core horn players on here. Tim Byrne and Herb Robertson are present. You've got Dewey Redman also. Gerry Hemingway on drums instead of Victor Lewis. Always wonderful to hear him play. This is just a great band. Of course, Helias on bass and all the original compositions. This one definitely is more out than The Current Set LP. This is, again, some seriously great music making. Modern jazz, out jazz, and completely free, really out there, crazy stuff. I love it, frankly. It's really cool. It's one of those records that just keeps you guessing all the time and rewards repeat listening. Anyway, Split Image. So Mark Helias, I think he did some other releases for the label, but those are the two that I have on vinyl. Another guy that recorded a lot for Gramavision, which I talked about just recently, go check out those videos if you like these, is Ray Anderson. And I don't know about you, there's certain albums in my collection that are pivotal. They sort of introduced me to players that I'd heard of but never really heard. And for me, that was this record. It's called Just So Happens. And it's a fun record. It's from 1987. And I bought it when it came out. I was just really into Ray Anderson via the stuff he did for Soul Note, Black Saint, his playing with Anthony Braxton, and the stuff he did on Gramavision, all that. I knew about all that. So when this came out, I was like, oh, I gotta have this. And it's really interesting because it's got a great lineup. Stanton Davis on trumpet and flugelhorn, who also did a record for Enja, which it sadly is not cheap. At least when I bought it, it wasn't. But he recorded one of the great fusion records of all time. I can't remember what it's called, but look him up on Discogs, you'll see it. It's been reissued. But anyway, Stan Davis, incredible trumpet player, sort of associated with the George Russell world. Mark Dresser on bass. I think this is the first record I ever heard Mark Dresser on, and I was like, oh, this guy's phenomenal. And so I went on a Mark Dresser binge after this. Ronnie Barrage on drums, who I knew about, but he really makes this, to me anyway, I'm a drummer, hobbyist drummer. Ronnie Barrage makes this record really special. He has a very distinct flair and sort of a funky fusion touch no matter what he's doing. I just became an instant Ronnie Barrage super fan after hearing this record. The drumming on this is unreal. Perry Robinson on clarinet. Now there's the example of a player that I'd heard about but never really heard. And I went out and got his record for Savoy Funk Dumpling after this, which is really, really cool. He's done a lot of really interesting records, mostly sort of in the proto free jazz realm, but also inside. He's one of those rare clarinet players who really had a lot of traction in the avant-garde free jazz world. Wonderful player. And finally, Bob Stewart on tuba, who I knew already at that point from his work with Bill Frisell and his own solo work on JMT. So this is just a great record. It's kind of a party record. Oddly enough, it's a modern jazz party record. If you ever get it, you'll see what I'm talking about. Anyway, it's a must-have. I learned so much about music from this record, and I think you would too, because it's just all over the place stylistically. Something else the label did, Enja did, that was really interesting to me was that they really were, it's a German label. They supported musicians from all over. And they did a lot with Japanese artists. And I'm going to talk about more of the Japanese artists in depth in the subsequent planned, but as of yet unrecorded video. I wanted to talk about this one though, because this is a remarkably great record, Aki Takase, and she has kind of a connection to Germany. She is an amazing piano virtuoso. People talk about Satoko Fujii and Hiromi and some of the other, Junko Onishi, some of the really fantastic Japanese pianists that have come up in the recent years. Aki Takase preceded all of them. She's a total virtuoso, total killing piano player, and she's married to Alexander von Schlippenbach, the leader of the Globe Unity Orchestra and also an Enja recording artist. Anyway, this is a great record. It's called Song for Hope, and I don't think it ever got a U.S. release. I think it's this is got the Obi. This is the Japanese version. I think there might be a German pressing as well. It's from 81, so it's a little bit earlier than some of the others. The band on this is incredible. Nobuyushi Ino on bass. If you look him up, I-N-O, not E-N-O, Nobuyushi Ino. If you look him up, you'll see he's got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of recordings in his discography as a soloist and as a band member. Really impressive. Played a lot with Masahiko Togashi, actually. And then the drummer on this is the outstanding Takeo Moriyama. This guy is really one of the most aggressive, fearsome drummers I have ever heard. And I just thought this will be interesting to see how he works in a piano trio, which I normally think of as a laid-back musical affair. He really he uses brushes a lot on this. I think he kind of had to. but when he picks up the sticks, man, all hell breaks loose. It's really, really excellent, and both Eno and Takase are up to the task of keeping up with Takeo Moriyama. The first track on the first side is a long piano solo. It's really cool, really beautiful. The rest of it, it's all over the place. It's kind of it edges into sort of a free jazz thing, but it's not quite. I wouldn't describe this as a free jazz record. It's just really great. And Aki Takase is a wonderful artist. I have several of her other releases, and they're uniformly great. Here's another recent pickup for me, and I did not even know this record existed until I saw it. Charlie Rouse, best known as sideman for Thelonious Monk, recorded this album in the 80s, 87, I think. The date's not on the back, but I think it's late 80s, 85, 87, something like that. It's got Benny Bailey on trumpet, Albert Daly on piano, Keith Copeland on drums, Buster Williams on bass, and of course Charlie Rouse on tenor. And it's side one's pretty straight ahead, really good. I mean, these players are unimpeachably great. Second side's got some funk. It's also got a sort of a modal waltz thing happening, which I don't know, makes it a real keeper for me. I mean, there's so much quality modern jazz out there, but the second side of this is something special, I think. And it's just a lot of great playing. It's called the Upper Manhattan Jazz Society, Charlie Rouse with Benny Bailey and Albert Daly. Albert Daly is another tragic and sadly under-recorded figure in the history of jazz. Really wonderful piano player. Okay, so I'm going to get into a few of the older artists that recorded for the label, a couple of the reissues, but before I get into that, Atila Zer, one of my favorite guitar players, recorded a lot for Enja. I had a couple of his other ones. Strangely, they were warped, and so they're long gone. I mean, they're irreparably warped, and not a heat warp, but like a storage warp that I just couldn't eliminate. So I got rid of them. But anyway, his records, these are the two I still have. This one is the newer of the two, Memories of Panonica, with Michael Formanek and the great Daniel Humer on drums, 1986. And it's a pretty mellow guitar trio record. It's very nice. I like it a lot. The other record he did, I think it was his first for the label, is called Dream Bells. And this is a real stunner. This is a little bit more out than Memories of Panonica, a little bit more risks going on, and the playing on this is just absolutely magnificent. And it's two guys I really don't know much about, Frank Luther on bass and Sonny Brown on drums. And this is an incredibly great guitar jazz record. Can't overemphasize that. There's a side-long track, the title track, gets way out there. And then side one's got 3 long tracks, one of which is a Dave Brubeck composition. The other 2 are by the Hungarian maestro himself, Atila Zer. Really great record. Can't over-recommend that one. Another record by an international artist on the label who recorded a lot for Enja, and I've already discussed one of his records, is Abdullah Ibrahim, formerly known as Dollar Brand. And this record's called African Space Program. And this is absolutely a must-have. This is such an incredibly great record. Most of the time, I don't think of Abdullah Ibrahim as a free jazz type of artist, but this record gets way out there. Way out there. It's pretty wild. He did the Live with Sweet Basil record on Chiaroscuro that's pretty out. This is on the same level, only it's with a big band. And the personnel on this is unbelievable. Cecil Bridgewater, Enrico Rava, Charles Sullivan, Kaini Zawadi, Sonny Fortune, Carlos Ward, one of my favorites, Roland Alexander on harmonica and tenor saxophone, John Stubblefield, Hamiet Blewett, Cecil McBee, and Roy Brooks, who gets a nice long solo on the musical Saw at one point. Anyway, it's not totally free. You'll recognize some of the themes here. But the tracks there's a side-long track on side 2 that's just monumental. And then side 1's 2 long tracks. And all of them, there's a lot of solos. and it's just a wonderful, exuberant, fantastic record. Can't recommend this enough. If you can't find the LP, get the CD. It's really African Space Program too. You gotta love that, African Space Program. I was in a group at one point called African Space Program. That was a fun group. Another artist that's recorded for the label, Elvin Jones, live at the Village Vanguard with George Coleman and Wilbur Little, Hannibal Marvin Peterson, who we'll talk about. We will talk about those records. On one track, this is a great record. If you like the trio format of Elvin Jones's groups, you'll dig this. The playing is killer. The recording quality is good enough. Some of the reissues on the label, and I think a lot of these, when the label split into two halves, they were both called Enja, but one was Enja Matthias Winkelmann, the other was Enja Horst Weber. And I tried to make sense of the discographies because you think, oh, they must have had artistic differences. There's actually tons of stylistic overlap, but a lot of the reissues, I think, and I know I'm wrong because there's exceptions to this, were released by the Horst Weber wing of the label. I think these were. Anyway, this is another must-have. Eric Dolphy. There's a bunch of Eric Dolphy reissues on Enja. This one is the U.S. pressing on Inner City. Anyway, great record. Great record. I mean, if you see Eric Dolphy on a record, you just buy it, right, if you're into jazz. And this is with one of his Euro lineups. Idris Solomon, Knud Jorgensen, Rune Offerman on piano, Jimmy Wood, expat, great bass player, and Sture Collin on drums. Anyway, cool record, the Stockholm Sessions. Finally, don't neglect these. I made the mistake of buying the CD version of these and realized there was missing tracks, like there's more material than would fit on a single CD. But these Mingus in Europe LPs are worth having for that alone. The tracks they leave off, I considered to be essential, as is all Mingus, in my opinion. So anyway, the two records, Mingus in Europe, volumes 1 and 2, again, also released as a CD, but I think they left off a track or two. But and this, of course, is with the classic Mingus band with Jackie Biard on piano, Eric Dolphy on flute and bass clarinet and alto saxophone, Mingus, of course, on bass, Danny Richmond on drums, and the great Clifford Jordan on tenor. Anyway, these are absolutely essential also, in my opinion. Anyway, Enja, great label. Having a lot of fun going through all these records because I play them before I talk about them. And anyway, I hope you found this video useful. And I got at least one more Enja label blathering up my sleeve. So stay tuned. Thanks a lot for listening and watching.